right, welcome, everybody. We're going to get started. We are battling a little bit with the internet, so we apologize if you are live streaming at home and this is bouncing in and out on you. If we get a better interconnection, we will do what we can. I'd like to welcome, of course, all of the candidates. We're super excited to have them here. We're super excited to have you here. We're really glad that Durham cares this much about a mayoral election, that Durham wants to participate this hard in civil discourse, this hard in democracy. It is certainly a time in our country and our society to be aware that democracy is a participatory process. If you are not participating, you're missing out. So many places in the world right now are living without this opportunity, without the opportunity to freely assemble and air their views. It is a precious value that we have in America that is not come for free. We have fought and worked and struggled to attain this discourse, and we must maintain it in a civil manner. We must not shout. We must listen to one another. We must learn. So bienvenidos, shalom, namaste, assalamu alaikum. Welcome to this conversation. We'd like to thank all of our sponsors, Ponysaurus for hosting us, my partner Heather Cook, who helped organize this, Pinhook, where we held our first roundtable, the Rick House, where we will be 1 week from today, 21C Durham, St. James Seafood, the Durham Hotel, Gridworks Durham, Urban Durham Realty, and Sonic Pie Productions, and Shadowbox, Sonic Pie providing the sound, thank you very much, Shadowbox providing the video. My friend Meredith Martindale of Picture Durham fame will be doing the timekeeping. Justin Laidlaw back there in the corner is running the Mayor Up hashtag. We encourage you to participate on that. Even if the live stream doesn't work, we will have video of this event. We do have video on the Clarion Content YouTube channel of the first event about policing. You're welcome to go back and watch it at any time. Each of the candidates will be allotted a 3-minute opening statement, which will happen momentarily, and then 75 seconds for each question, to answer each question. Meredith will be keeping track of the time. We will be rather strict on that. We're going to cut the candidates off one sentence after the 75-second time allotment in an effort to get to as many of your questions as possible. We drew lots beforehand to see who would go first for the opening statements. Farad Ali drew number 1, and he is going to talk to you about affordable housing. Thank you, everybody, so much for coming. We're really glad you want to participate.
All right, good evening. How are y'all doing? Farad Ali, running for mayor, and wanted to talk a little about affordable housing. I know we're going to have a lot of discussion, so I'll try to get quickly to the point because I know my time will be short. It's interesting when we talk about this affordable housing from a standpoint of what should we do. We know affordable housing is it's something in our community where we need. It's an obligation. I think what you'll hear from this community is more not about if we need affordable housing, but how we're going to do it. And so I wanted to inform the community of that. I understand affordable housing being a product of affordable housing and needing that. Additionally, when I grew up, I got a chance to work in banking and support affordable housing groups like DHIC and the Land Trust and all these other groups by providing the financing to help them to make sure they had affordable housing funding to make that work. Additionally, I've been a lender for affordable housing, understanding the impact of what affordable housing can do for families. We in Durham have a need for affordable housing when you look at the fact that we have so much poverty. And when you have 20% of the poverty in our community and you're talking about growing it continuously around the economic development, we need to find a better way of making sure as we do economic development projects that we protect the community and we make sure we have community development, that we protect the integrity of the culture of the community, and then make sure we have human development where we put the structure around them to do well. I don't think you can do affordable housing just without looking at the economics of it. Although I think affordable housing is an economic development issue, you need to look at the holistic approach. We need to talk about public, private, nonprofit partnerships so that we can help people to graduate through the affordable housing process from home ownership to moving out of housing communities, to move from transitional housing and also from homelessness. So a strategy around how do we move people through the ecosystem of housing is going to be very important. And as mayor, that's something that I would put on the table. I'm not sure the Durham City Council, which only has $5.5 million of housing money, is enough. We have a large problem, and Karen Lotto wrote a report, and some of you all know it. I think we need to create a housing trust fund that we can leverage the dollars of corporations, private investors, and the city dollars, and even ask the county to participate so we can take that money and elevate it, then go out and do LIHTCs, like the low-income housing tax credits, the 9%, the 4%, and all this money and collaborate it together so we can make a bigger impact. Upon doing something like that, we can help change some of the affordable housing at the 80% range and maybe around the 50% range. After that, I think we need to issue a bond. Consider what is the bond referendum that we can do around this affordable housing. But to do that, you have to have specific goals around where that money would go. And so some of the supportive services around that to include around transportation, development for the person, as well as housing. That housing could be apartments, that housing could be working with people like Habitat for Humanity, and also could be home ownership. As a child who understands and works in a community around minority and women-owned businesses, it's important to know that wealth is created through housing in our communities through two ways, either through housing or business. So if people are just in housing communities for long periods of time, we haven't done our job because it doesn't build the family's wealth tree and doesn't allow them to move forward. So I ask that you vote for me and we continue this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Up next is Pierce Freelon.
Thank you. How's everybody doing tonight? All right, my name is Pierce Freelon. I'm running for mayor. I hope to earn your vote. I want to start with talking about experience. A lot of people have asked me about my experience, and I want to talk about the experience of city council. So from 2000 to 2015, there's been about $1.5 billion of investment in a 1 mile radius of the downtown loop. We're standing in that radius right now. Do you know how many affordable housing units we have in that radius? 0. That is the experience of the status quo. There have been 800, last year we had 800 evictions every month in the city of Durham. That's over 10,000 evictions in Durham in 2016. That is the experience of the status quo. The average rent in Durham has skyrocketed to over $1,000 a month, which is well beyond what most Durhamites can afford, and that is the experience of the status quo. So I would ask y'all, are these Durham's values? Because this is what experience has got you. And if you're comfortable with the status quo, there are some candidates you can choose from, and I'm not one of them. I've got some different ideas about where we should focus to eliminate poverty, which is the core issue here. I believe that Durham can be and is a creative, diverse, and equitable city. I believe that Durham should be a place where the Carrick and the Scrap Exchange and others who've been pushed out because they can't afford to be downtown should be recentered, and there should be spaces created where artists can thrive. I believe that Durham should invest in civic organizations like the Land Trust, Habitat for Humanity, and CASA in the same way that we've invested in private enterprise. The city manager has already said that we don't have enough money to solve our affordable housing problem. It's too expensive, the affordable housing crisis that were created by the policies of city council. We need to reorient our focus to address poverty, which is the biggest issue facing our city. Karen Lotto, we mentioned, she said that we're subsidizing low wages with affordable housing. And the supply, it's a supply and demand question. There are 38 units available for every 100 in need, and we can't create the number of units to meet the demand. So we need to decrease the demand by creating living wage jobs with benefits for the most vulnerable communities in Durham. That's how we address affordable housing from a two-tiered. I mean, we have to address it. We've got some other ideas, tiny homes, circuit breakers, and not just, tiny homes that can be built vertically, that can be green, that can be smart. We need to make sure that we're investing in circuit breakers so that folks who have been priced out of their homes aren't under pressure to sell out. But if we don't address poverty, this will be a problem that continues to plague our communities. Oh, is that my time? Okay, thank you so much. And we'll talk more about that.
Thank you so much, Pierce. Shay Ramirez. Candidate, just a reminder, Meredith is the timekeeper over here. She'll be waving at you with 10 seconds to go as a warning, and then we'll allow you one sentence past that, or past your allotted time. Thank you, Shay.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Shay Ramirez, and I'm running for mayor of Durham. So I have been in Durham since 1991, and I have seen a lot of changes, mainly downtown. I used to have a shoe store downtown, and it was, when I was there, it was ghost town. It wasn't like it is now. But what bothers me about the development is we have a beautiful downtown, and like Pierce said, we have no affordable housing downtown. And right here is the bridge. We have homeless people living underneath that bridge. So that baffles me to even think that we can have this. It's like two different Durhams. We have this downtown Durham, and then right there you have another Durham that caters to people that are less fortunate. And I think, a lot of times we make goals for affordable housing, but we need to make this a priority. It has to be a priority. We have to fix the issue. I know it's issues going on with affordable housing in Durham and other cities in the United States, but we have to make it a priority. I think it's a priority that everyone, no matter your status quo, no matter your religion, your sexuality, everyone has sustainable housing. That's very important. And I think we kind of put certain people on the back burner and we worry about stakeholders and developers when we should be worrying about the citizens. So running for mayor, my main goal is to mandate goals and rules to solve the affordable housing problem. Not make them goals, but to mandate, meaning that it's mandatory that we fix the issue immediately. We can't have a beautiful Durham, a unique Durham, and we have homelessness, which is, to me, it's out of control. I have never seen so many people that are homeless in 2017. I've been here, like I said, since 1991, and the issue is getting worse, it's not getting better. And I feel that local government, we have to do our part, not only local government, but citizens. And what I want to do is to make sure that everyone, no matter, again, your religion, your skin color, your background, everyone has affordable housing and a safe place to live, because you can have affordable housing, but if it's not in a safe environment, that still defeats the purpose. So what I want to do is to make sure, and I want to mandate that we make it a priority that every citizen in Durham has affordable housing, and that's what I plan to do. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shay. Really appreciate it. Sylvester Williams is next. Is that right? Yes, thank you.
I'm Sylvester Williams, the next mayor of Durham, North Carolina. I like to say, first of all, that Christ Jesus, he is first in my life. There's no one that could replace him. I also like to say Happy Yom Kippur to you, too. One of the things that I'm really dismayed about, in 1965, Patrick Moynihan produced what they call the Moynihan Report. And in this report, it talked about how the African American, the Negro family, how it was being disadvantaged with poverty. As a matter of fact, the word ghetto that came to be associated with the projects came originally from the Jews and how they segregated them and set them apart from others. That same thing from 1965 is still happening now here in the city of Durham. And we look the other way as though everything is okay. The poverty rate has increased 28% in the city of Durham from 2000 to 2015. 1 out of 2 blacks you see living in the city of Durham, look around you, every other one is living in poverty. Durham has a poverty rate that's greater than the state of North Carolina, that's greater than the country. And you ask, how could this be in a city as prosperous as Durham, North Carolina? I'm glad you asked that question, because a lot of it is based on institutional racism. Look out over your way where Fayette Street was, or Fayette Street Projects was, where they destroyed it. And so what they did, they gave this company called Campus Apartments $4 million in 2007 to go and develop low housing for them. And what they said is, well, you know what? We're not sure now. We went and repurchased that property, the city of Durham did, and we're saying, you know what? We're not sure that we can put in that area the same thing that was there, because we don't want to have too many low-income people congregated together, as though being low income is a crime. And these are the things that's happening. And we look the other way and like, oh, they just bad. No, they're not just bad. It's that we can't face what we're doing to people because we can't look in the mirror. And it's time to start looking in the mirror and say, well, what is that we're doing to the city of Durham? I'm a Durhamite. I was born in Durham. I lived in Durham. I understand the dynamics of Durham. I understood what happened to Haiti. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Reverend Williams. Councilman Steve Schul, and then we will start the questions from the audience and the internet. Steve, you got that mic all right? You want the other one? All right.
So if you're interested in a candidate who just wants the status quo, don't vote for me either. This is a really important issue. I've answered probably 20 questionnaires about it already, as my fellow candidates have as well. And we're probably on our 20th forum that's at least addressed this somewhat. But it's great to be here and have a full forum about it. We have had a lot of successes about affordable housing already in the last couple of years, which I'd love to talk about. But what I thought I'd do is give a complete strategy for how to create all the affordable housing we can create in Durham in 2 minutes. So here it is. Support the Durham Housing Authority and its massive redevelopment efforts that will serve 6,000 people living in the Durham Housing Authority communities. Take on the task of ending homelessness in Durham through rapid rehousing and the construction of permanent supportive housing, as we have ended veterans' homelessness in Durham, which I'd love to talk about in a little bit. Make publicly owned land downtown available for affordable housing development. Leverage affordable housing development through our publicly owned land. Create a pipeline of projects that will compete well for the state's 9% tax credits. Get one of those tax credit deals every year. Continue to leverage affordable housing through the now 2 pennies for housing that we just raised it to this year. Figure out what the total need is for city affordable housing and then fund to that amount. Fund to that amount through raising taxes up through the penny as we have, or through a bond issue if we need to. Maintain the affordability of existing multifamily housing, including the 5,000 units of mandatorily affordable housing that are now coming out of the mandatory affordability period. Maintain the affordability of those units, and I have a strategy for that. Help low-income homeowners stay in their homes in gentrifying neighborhoods by funding rehabilitation of their homes at scale, because it's home repair that's driving people, long-term low-income homeowners, out of their homes. Help the 4% tax credit act like the 9% tax credit. Seek out 4% tax credit developers who can build affordable homes. Strengthen the development capacity of our local nonprofits. Re-engage self-help credit union and affordable rental housing development, which we have done. Support second mortgage and land purchases for Habitat for Humanity, which we're doing. Explore the best uses of tiny homes and micro rentals. Look for niche opportunities such as affordable teacher housing, which I'm working on a lot now and I would love to talk about tonight. Adopt the planning department's enhanced density bonus. Establish a local housing trust fund, which Farad mentioned. Complete the second phase of the loss at Southside. The first phase is 132 units, 80 of them affordable at 60% of the area, median income or less, 52 of them market rates, a true mixed income community. We can create that in Durham. And that's my time.
Thank you so much, Councilman Schul, and all the candidates. We're now going to go 75 seconds a person. We will just continue the order we've been using, which means Pierce will answer first for the first question, Shay second, and so on, Farad last, as he spoke first. The first question, we sent out some emails to various organizations and individuals who we know are concerned with affordable housing. This one was submitted by Durham Habitat for Humanity. Pierce, you'll go first, 75 seconds. How should we measure the return on our investment in affordable housing developments? How should we measure the return on our investment in affordable housing developments? Pierce Freelon is first.
Thank you for the question. I think that's a really important question that I think I want to contextualize within a broader accountability measure. So in Durham, between 2012 and 2015, there were about $23.5 million in tax incentives given to development downtown, with very little accountability about how those dollars were spent. There are cities like Austin that have multi-tiered gauges to determine if we're getting the right bang for our buck. You know, you put $1 in, you want to know what you get out of it. And that hasn't been happening adequately here in Durham. I think there are a bunch of wonderful organizations in Durham doing the work, and we need to make sure that we are holding them accountable to the demands that the city has in terms of affordable housing. Right now, the need is 14,500 units, And that is really kind of the core question when it comes down to accountability. We can't provide that many units simply by doing the measures that Mr. Schul has outlined. We need to also address the root of the problem, which is poverty. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pierce Freelon. Remember, when Meredith raises her hand, it means you have 10 seconds left. She'll yell time when you're totally out of time, and we'll give you one more sentence. Shay Ramirez, the question is, how should we measure the return on our investment in affordable housing developments?
Thank you for the question. So for me, how do we measure it? I'm going to say by sustainability. We can get people affordable housing, but how long are they going to stay in it if they don't have the tools and the resources to keep it up? So it's not that, I don't think it's not that we can't provide affordable housing, it's just how do we help people maintain their affordable housing. So sustainability is a huge thing for me, and I think that's what we need to work on. Resources, workshops, teaching people to stay in their home, to keep their home. I'm thinking maybe a 10-year mark that should be enough for me to realize if somebody is able to stay in their home or not.
Thank you very much, Shay Ramirez. Steve Schul, how do we measure the return on investment in affordable housing?
So the question comes from Habitat, and Habitat has a really good return on investment, a very unusual return on investment, which is 100% return on investment of the city's money. What the city does for Habitat is we give every Habitat homeowner a $20,000 second mortgage, interest-free. That's from your tax money. And that is repaid, and 100% of Habitat homeowners have repaid their loans. So this is a fabulous way to use our money. It's an awesome return on investment. But here's the other thing I'll say about return on investment generally, and I know I don't have much time. It's a lot more effective in terms of return on investment to keep affordable units affordable than it is to build new. And there are a lot of good strategies around that. I'll mention one that has a really good return on investment. The Durham Community Land Trustees has just purchased 54 units in East Durham, and they are asking the city to come help repair that through your penny for housing money, your taxes, to help repair those 54 units. And if we do, at about $20,000 a unit, they will keep them permanently affordable. That is also really good bang for the buck. So the best bang for the buck, the best return on the investment, is trying to keep affordable units affordable rather than building new.
Thank you so much, Councilman Schul. Pastor Williams, the return on investment for affordable housing. How do we measure the return on investment for affordable housing?
Thank you for asking the question. I talked with two officials for Habitat for Humanity. And one of the things they told me, they have 26 acres of land to be developed, but they don't have the money to develop the land, whereby hundreds of families, there could be hundreds of homes. Now, what I'm saying is this. That same $4 million that they say they need to develop the land, they took that $4 million and they purchased Fayette Place. And what's happening to it now? They're still trying to decide what they're going to do with Fayette Place when there is land ready to be developed. A return on investment is when I see a working mother and father, husband and wife, who say they want a house, they've been able to get a house and live in that house. And as a pastor, I see it too many times where there are people that are working who are struggling and are saying now they cannot afford houses in Durham, or people now on Section 8 saying that, you know what we're having to do now? We're having to go outside of Durham to Graham and to other places for Section 8 housing. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor Williams. Farad Ali.
All right, wonderful. The question was, how do you measure the ROI on affordable housing? I think this is a human issue, and as I said before, you'll hear all of us talk about not if we need affordable housing, but really how do we do it. And this is a sense of measurement now. Now, how do you measure it? You measure by knowing the number of people you affect. Again, as I said, I'm a product of affordable housing, and when you know that you're going to affect families, you measure by how many numbers. How many of those numbers did we decrease? How many more affordable housing units did we provide? And secondly, if you're talking about it from a city investment standpoint, the way you measure it is that you talk about for every dollar that we put in, how much did we get out in people to get homes? So if we can put in $1 million and we can get 100 more people in affordable housing, then we need to keep funding that because that's the kind of results that we need. If we're going to be able to put in 5.5 million and only get 200 units, that's not an efficient manner. So when you measure ROI, there's a quantitative and a qualitative measure. And I think first measure, because this is a cool city where people care about people, is to measure how many more housing did we provide, affordable housing. And second, what's the actual impact of the dollars that we invested as a city in that number.
Thank you, Farad Ali. By the way, if you're following along, we are at the Mayor Up hashtag on Twitter, if you're looking for us topically. The second question, we are going to have Nikki Rivers, who submitted a question on Facebook, come up and ask her question. Are you here, Nikki Rivers? I can make you the third question. Oh, there you are, Nikki Rivers. I'm going to hand you the mic. Pierce Freelon will answer first, right? No, Pierce answered first last time. Shay will answer first. All the candidates are going to answer the question, so.
Okay, so my question is, as someone who will be a future homeowner, and I've been in Durham for a number of years, why did the city council wait till only 3 years ago to address the poverty and lack of housing in Durham, knowing that the gentrification has risen rapidly and that people would be displaced? Why are the people, especially those who have a public record of having served in the city council, really didn't address that previously or have the forward thinking to think to see how that would affect people? And how would you do anything differently now?
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Shay Ramirez.
Thank you for the question. Well, I'm not on city council. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think it's a priority. I think what we're doing in Durham is that we are putting developers or putting money over top of people. And I think that's a huge problem. Some people might not want to say that, but that's the truth. So we are informal here and we're going to keep it real, right? Right? Okay. So I'm not on city council, but from my point of view, that's what I think and that's what I see, because again, we have a vibrant and beautiful and unique city, but a lot of times we're trying to build the city, so we are pretty much putting our focus on developers and not on the people. So by putting the focus on the developers, the people suffer. And I think that we need to flip it. Now is the time to where the developers need to be on the back burner, the people need to be on the top. It needs to be a priority that we take care of every citizen to make sure that they have housing. No excuses, it just needs to get done. That's all I have to say.
Shay Ramirez, thank you so much. Councilman Chul.
So I am on city council. I work on this every day, and the fact of the matter is it's hard to do. So here are some things we've done. I mentioned already the lofts at Southside, 132 units, 80 of them affordable, 50% of the area median income or less. Whitted School, right up on top of the hill, 79 units, just built with a 9% tax credit, 79 affordable units to elderly people at 30% of the area median income or less. Goley Point, right down here, 20 units, 12 of them affordable at people at 30% of the area median income or less, 8 of them affordable for people who were formerly homeless with disabilities. We've ended veterans' homelessness in Durham this year. That means if you're a veteran and you live in Durham and you were homeless and you go to the VA, you will be rehoused within 30 days, and we do that every time. We have the Jackson Street land with an RFP behind the bus station, which will soon have affordable housing on it. We spent $4 million to buy Fayette Place, which we'll be putting affordable housing on with a great community process that we need to have. I know I sound like Donald Trump when I say great. With a fabulous community process that we need to have to make sure that that works. We're doing a lot of affordable housing in Durham. I can tell you it's more of the things we're doing. We're doing a lot.
Thank you, Councilman. Pastor Williams.
It's easy to understand why nothing has happened. Follow the money trail. I am a retired financial analyst, and I know the influence that money has on people and on candidates. And when you start following the money trail, you see why what has happened. When I said that poverty increased 28% from 2000 to 2015, when I say that 1 out of 2 blacks are living in poverty, When I say that Durham has a greater poverty rate than the state and the country, that should have gotten someone's attention to say that Durham is not being evenly, the wealth is not being evenly distributed in the city. But they ignored it. And now to look at Fayette Place and saying, what can we do? And I just told you that Habitat for Humanity has 26 acres they want to develop for that same $4 million. They're just sitting there and doing nothing. Do we have the will? And we have people sitting in office who don't have the will to make things happen for people who've been disadvantaged, people who've been put out, people who've been hurt. And that's what I bring to the mayor's office. I bring someone who has the will to make sure that every part of Durham is being adequately represented. Thank you.
Lee.
Yeah, I will not recite or regurgitate what Steve Schul has said around what's been happening during his duration on council. When I was on council, we did focus on some housing projects, but mainly through investing in nonprofits. We were providing things to the Affordable Housing Coalition through the Durham Land Trust, financing them because they were providing the home ownership. That was in 2007. So the city council's budget provided financing for organizations that built people into having home ownership. In 2008, there was a market crash. And when that market crashed, it affected our whole country, and particularly in Durham. And when that happened, a lot of the affordable housing counselors went away, and we weren't able to provide any support there. But there were other projects that the city of Durham has done before I even got to council. They did the Barnes Avenue project and kind of changed the whole fabric of that community. I remember that community before. And actually also started getting involved with the South Side project. So I can't say that Durham has not participated in providing some affordable housing, but the primary housing process was around the Housing Authority of Durham. So when the city got involved, it was mainly through providing supportive services or funding for counseling service that would help people build wealth through their process, through these different nonprofits.
Pierce Freelon.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate that question because I want to make sure that we hold our city council members accountable for the situation that we find ourselves in right now. And we can see that when Durham is a creative, vibrant city. If we decide that we want to do something, we'll do it. You know, policing is a priority to the city. This is costing us $71 million, and we're paying $60 million to the police department. That's a total of $131 million that we're investing in policing. We just upped our affordable housing to another penny, which will create another $5.5 million to focus on affordable housing. So I say that to say, you know, we're working on a transit thing that's going to be $1.5 billion. If we wanted to address the root of the problem, we would do it. We just need the civic imagination and the civic will to focus on the root of the problem. And I think that's something that's been lacking. We need another voice in the chorus of city council that is progressive, that is bold, and that is going to focus on the core root of the problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Pierce Freelon. The next question comes from someone named Jesus on Facebook. The question, and Steve, you will go first. How do you hold the current affirmative housing organizations that receive city money accountable for their work? So how do you hold the organizations that receive city money for affordable housing accountable for their work? From Jesus on Facebook. Thank you very much.
So we have an audit committee of the city council. I'm on it, and we actually recently just did audit the money that we give to our nonprofits, housing nonprofits, and that's how we hold them accountable. But we hold them accountable in other more important ways as well, which is, you know, in a broader context, which is do this work well. So when the Durham Community Land Trustees has 54 units that it's purchased in East Durham, and it wants us to support them through your penny for housing money, we know they do a good job, and we'll do it. When they put 9 units of Piedmont, 9 units of rental over here on Piedmont, we know they do good work, and we supported it, and they did it. When Habitat comes and says, so recently, the Housing Authority, there's 37 units over here in what's called Franklin Village, 37 lots with utilities already in them, haven't been able to be built on. Habitat and a private developer have worked with the Durham Housing Authority to take those properties over, and we're going to support that because we know that Habitat does really good work, and we're going to hold them accountable in that way. They're going to build those houses and do it well. So CASA is another nonprofit. Speaking of really good affordable housing in Durham, they just purchased with the $250,000 support of your money from the city, 79 units in West Durham, 10 of them.
Time. Sorry about the feedback there, Steve. I just figured you couldn't hear Meredith. Pastor Williams, how do you keep the affordable housing organizations that receive city money accountable for their work? How do you hold them accountable?
Thank you for that question, because if you go back to 2002, there was a scandal with the Durham Housing Authority with the person in charge as far as how things were being managed. So it lets you know that things aren't probably being looked at as close as they should. Now, one thing about it is that when you look at the city council position, it can be a full-time position as far as time, and I am retired, so I can put the time in. But if you're working a job, it's hard to put that time in to making sure that everything works as properly as it should. One reason why there would be a level of accountability to me is because I live in East Durham. I come from one of the poorer parts of Durham. I'm a pastor. I deal with people on a daily basis almost who don't have affordable housing, who are looking for places to live in the state. So I would know firsthand whether those needs are being satisfied in the community with those who say they don't have affordable housing, or if the money's not being handled properly, especially if we have the will, as I hope to do as mayor, to put that money forth to address those issues, to make sure that it goes where it's supposed to go. Thank you.
Lee.
Yes, thank you. I think it's important to know that, again, Steve being on council knows this, and also I do, is that the audit goes around in audits departments to make sure the money's going where it's supposed to go. Additionally, we could put a matrix on that, on the input or the output of what we're going to get from the investment of the dollars. As I said earlier, understanding the total problem is it means what's going to cost to fix this affordable housing issue, and what impact can we make on a plan each year. And so when you start talking about how do we measure the impact of nonprofits, it goes along with a matrix or funding mass. And we said, listen, you said you're going to do this with this money. We give you this money for training and developing and getting people into homes or providing affordable housing, and then we measure that against their output.
Pierce Freelon.
Hey, I think a lot of people have spoken to the audit, which I think is an important measure of accountability for where our city dollars are going and the nonprofits that are doing the work. There's a lot of great nonprofits in Durham doing really good work. But I think the accountability really lies in your hands. As the community of Durham, we are accountable as city officials to you. So I would ask you to think about what the trends in Durham have been and how you can hold city council accountable for the way that things have trended and how we can move in a different direction if indeed we want a different trajectory for the city of Durham. You are the people with the most power to hold us accountable because you elect us to put your values into practice through the policies that we create. And I will be a mayor that will fight every day against poverty to make sure that people can afford to live in the place where they choose, because that is the number one issue that is impacting our most vulnerable communities. It's a roof over their head, but it's also food on their table. It's safe and non-threatening streets, as Maya Angelou put it, and our communities will not be safe, nor will our folks have a warm place to live if we don't give people a living wage with benefits in the city of Durham. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pierce. Shay Ramirez.
So I'm not going to give you a long, drawn-out answer. What I have to say is that we do not hold people accountable. We don't hold people accountable. A couple of months ago, I was going to be doing a block party at Central Park, and I had reached out to some city officials, and I asked them for their help. And what they said to me was, it's on the weekend, we don't work. I can't help you. So my thing is that if anybody is going to work with the city, to me, I don't care if it's the weekend, I don't care if it's after hours. We have an issue with housing, and we need to address it. So that means everyone, local government, citizens, needs to do their part, chip in, and help. And I know everybody works, and I know it's their job, but a lot of times we just do it, just say it's a job, and we don't really put the care and empathy into it. It's people's lives that are at stake here. It's people not like us that have nowhere to go. They don't have anything. So I think we need to be more accountable for other citizens as well as ourselves. And I don't think we do a good job of that. But as being your mayor, I will hold people accountable, and I will make sure. I don't want it to be my family members out there, and I'm sure you don't. So we have to go that extra mile to help people.
Thank you. By the way, if you're on the right side and there's not room, there's plenty of room between the last two picnic tables on the left side to both stand and sit on the ground, or you're welcome to come sit up front here. The fourth question of the night, Reverend, you'll answer first. Yes, from Candace on Facebook. Candace asks, in many cities, developers are required to meet a certain criteria that ensure a percentage of the units available are at the median income level. How do you plan on addressing the current lack of guidelines for developers in Durham, mandates or goals? Reverend Williams?
Well, I don't think that's realistic to set mandates. As I was just looking through my notes, one of the things that I saw, with Fayette Place and develop, it's about how that, not being able to afford to build affordable housing. So you can set mandates. You can say, well, this is what we want to do. But the reality of it is that is it going to take place? You're dealing with people. You're dealing with jobs. You're dealing with business. As I said, once again, as a retired financial analyst, one thing that I know is you look at the economy has been on this growth trajectory about 8-9 years, which is usually the length before you hit a downturn in the economy. How do you predict that? How do you say we're going to have a certain number of homes or houses built or whatever during a downturn? So no, I'm saying we can set goals, we can have policies, but as far as saying that, okay, these are things we're actually going to do, no, you're not being realistic. But what I say, the thing about being realistic is this right here. The thing being realistic is this right here, is to know that the people that you are serving, that you can be transparent enough to tell them that what you're doing is the best for them, that what you're doing, that you're looking out for them, and you're not hiding behind numbers.
Farad Ali.
Yeah, this current legislature has decided to move from a state focus to a city focus, and it's taken away a lot of benefits or policy processes that we can do inside of city council. I do believe you can't do mandates for housing. That is not possible and under the current laws of the state. So there's some opportunity there in the state legislature. But I do think we can set goals and as people continue to develop. But a lot of this is around the culture of our community. The culture of our community is now talking about affordable housing. So as developers begin to come into our community, we can set the standard for what we would like to see. You can not just talk about ways that we're going to talk about density or housing, but more around why it's important for the culture of our city to be protected, and that as you continue to do development and economic development, you can get a return for your investment, but you can also make a bigger return inside of the community. So I think it's the culture that we have to raise with developers and tell them if you have the right culture and understanding the culture of our community, then we're going to support your projects. We need developers to do the projects because the city can only be best in investing in this work, even in our nonprofits or developers. So how do we make sure that we have the culture for inclusion?
Pierce, you want to let the train go by for a second?
Sure.
Very Durham moment. Thank you so much.
I've been interrupted by that train on many occasions.
I believe that.
Okay. So I actually agree with what Farad said about the culture, but I would challenge him a little bit on what the culture of the city council has been. If you look at the record of city council, there's been a focus on go development at the expense of sustainability and at the expense of equity, and I think that's a place where we need to shift, and we have an opportunity to change direction. Thank you for the clap. I do want to say that just like I said, city council members are accountable to y'all. It is so important, Durham, that we not only lead the city of Durham with our values, but that we lead the state of North Carolina with our values and flip some of these seats in that supermajority that they have in the state. And you know what that's going to take? It's going to take all of us kind of working together, and especially one of the biggest voting blocks in the United States of America is millennials. We need to make sure that young people are engaged, that they're voting in local politics so that we can have an impact at the state level. Right now, HB 142 is tying our hands. It's preventing us from creating these types of ordinances until 2020. And the only way we're going to address that is if we get up and we exercise our power to vote, and we need everybody in here to go tell your friends to go vote. Vote in your local elections, and let's have that impact at the state level. Thank you.
Thank you, Pierce. Shay Ramirez.
So goals is something that we all write down and we have, right? But it's not really something that it might come to pass. For me, I go against the grain. I've always been different, unique, weird, whatever you want to call it. And I'm going to ask for a mandate. I want a mandate because it's a problem for me to see people displaced. It bothers me because I'm looking at these people as if they're my friends and my family. So I want mandates because it's not that we can't do it, it's that it's going to be difficult, but it can be done. You got to push the grain. And a lot of times with politicians, they don't want to do that. But I'm willing to do that, and that's what I'm going to do if I become mayor. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Councilman Steve Schul.
It is true that we need to change the legislature, but it is also true that we can get developers involved in building affordable units in Durham before we change the legislature, and here's how. In the light rail corridor, we will have a light rail 12 years from now. In the light rail corridor, and there's land, publicly owned land, and other land that we are developing into compact neighborhoods. And here's what we need to do. First, don't give the zoning away. Downzone and keep the zoning at a very low level. So when a developer comes in and they want to zone up, they have to ask for it, and then we offer them two things. We can't require them to include affordable units, as Farad has said. We can't require that by state law. But what we can do is incentivize it. Offer them a density bonus. You include affordable units, you get more density. And the second thing is this. Take the tax incentives that we've been offering to develop downtown, which has developed downtown, and move those tax incentives over to affordable housing. Offer a developer, for example, 5 years of half their taxes if they'll include, you pick we'd have to have a good formula, smart people would have to figure it out. X percent, 15% of your units are affordable to people at 50% of the area median income or below. We can make that happen.
Thank you so much, Councilman Schul. I would encourage, again, people to follow this on the Mayor Up hashtag. Please continue submitting questions, making comments. The candidates will be looking at that hashtag after this interaction for what you think. And I want to echo all of the candidates that change is not possible without the likes of you. There are 5 of them. Look around. There are 250 of you. If you want to change the direction of the city, if you want to change the direction of the county, of the state, of the country, it is your personal participation that will make the difference. That is the ethic that America was founded on. That is the difference that we offer to the rest of the world. It is about you personally being involved. If you want to preach to your children about it, if you want to talk to your parents or grandparents about it, it is personal motivation that makes it happen. And we're glad that you're here tonight. We hope that we'll see twice as many people next week, a week from now at the Rick House on October 4th when we talk equality of opportunity. I believe Farad Ali is next. The question is from our online forum, and you can submit questions online at clarioncontentmedia.com/mayorup. Mayor Up is the hashtag as well. This is, have you or your campaign taken money from development interest groups? If yes, how will you maintain independence of judgment on the issues of affordable housing, gentrification, and preservation of public spaces? Farad Ali is first.
Yep, thank you. Yes, my campaign has accepted money from developers. I don't think we need to, bifurcate development from affordable housing, though. We have nonprofit developers, and we also have for-profit developers. The integrity of accepting money is different. We take money in our campaigns to run a race. We don't take money in our campaign to do something around our integrity. So I want to make sure that it's clear that if this is an integrity question, that I will support the voice of the people, not support the voice of the developers. I'm going to say what's best for this community. But we do need developers because everything that we're talking about doing affordable housing includes developers. So you can't do it without them. So how do we create a process where we have inclusion around the financing process? That's why I talked about a housing fund. Because in the housing fund, we allow developers to help us to get this done, to help us to build this out. I don't think the city is good at housing development. That's not the talent of the city. And we've had some models that we've proven that has not worked. But it's very important to understand that we're going to need developers who have a conscience to work on our projects to make sure that we get affordable housing for the 30%, the 50%, and the 80% of median income. And there are developers that do that are for-profit and nonprofit. And our current nonprofit developers also get money from for-profit developers because of the importance of building in our community.
Thank you. Piers Freelon.
Thank you. As far as I know, I've only taken money from one developer. That's Josh Parker, who I went to Durham School of the Arts with. We were known him for most of my life. And to answer the question, if he asked me to do something that is against the will of the people of Durham, he's going to get a hell no, because I'm not accountable to him or to anybody but the people of Durham. And that's my commitment to y'all. I want to say that to provide a little historical context, we are sitting a few feet from 147, which the conscious policy choices of developers and city council carved up the historic black Hayti community in Black Wall Street, displacing hundreds of black homes and businesses. And we have an opportunity in 2017 to exacerbate those legacies of institutional racism or to reverse them. 800 people were evicted out of the city of Durham in 2016. If that doesn't smell like gentrification is the new urban renewal, I don't know what is. I will not betray the legacies of my ancestors. I will stand up and fight for the people who are currently in Hayti and for the future of Durham, regardless of who gives me money. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pierce. Shay Ramirez.
No, I have not taken any money from developers. Again, I'm a sort of kind of rebel. And I'm not going to take any money from developers unless they are willing, and they're probably not, willing to help everybody. Everyone needs sustainable housing. And it's not about the money, it's about the people. It's about the community. I care about the community. So I don't want your money. I want you to come here and I want you to build affordable housing. I want you to help these people that are displaced and need a nice, safe, decent place to live. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Steve Schul.
I may have a couple $100 that I've taken from developers, but I don't know. But it's not much. I want to use this 1 minute, though, to say something else. We haven't talked about what is by far the most important affordable housing challenge in Durham, and that's the redevelopment of the Durham Housing Authority. The Durham Housing Authority, there's 6,000 units, 6,000 people living in Durham Housing Authority communities. 6,000 supported by Section 8. That's 1 in 20 of Durhamites that are supported by the Durham Housing Authority, and the Durham Housing Authority properties are old and they're crumbling, and the city is helping to redevelop them. That's the most important thing we can do. They're our poorest people, they're elderly, many of them are disabled. We have to help the Durham Housing Authority redevelop its aging properties, and we're doing it. I want people to keep that in mind. Whatever else we do with our nonprofits, whatever we leverage with developers, pales in comparison to the job we need to do to help the Durham Housing Authority redevelop. Daymar Court and Maureen Road are being redeveloped now. Price Steel Place was just redeveloped, all of this with help from your tax money. And we're taking on, there are 14 housing authorities, communities, and we need to take them all on. That's job one for affordable housing in Durham.
Thank you. Reverend Williams.
They say that imitation is the greatest form of flattery. And I'm thankful that the candidates have picked up some of my talking points as far as poverty here in the city of Durham. One thing I like to say, though, is this right here, is that, as I said before, follow the money trail. I mean, when you see things not being done in the city of Durham, there is a reason why. I sat with lobbyists in Washington, D.C., and I understand the influence of money. And so if you believe that these elections are won by signs, you're deceiving yourself. I made it to the general election in 2013 against Mayor Bell, and that's when I realized then, signs don't win elections. What wins elections is connecting with people. This is why I come out to as many of these forums that I can, so you can know me whether you like me, dislike me, whatever your opinion may be about me. I want you to know who I am, and that's what it takes. It takes me connecting with the people. And it's not the money. What has happened, the reason why the poverty rate has increased the rate that it has, why Durham has the worst poverty rate than the state, why Durham has the worst poverty rate than the country, is because there are people who are willing to follow the money trail rather than do what's right by the people. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question was submitted by someone who's here. Jesse McCoy, would you like to come up and read your question? Seems like Jesse and Steve Schul were thinking somewhat similar about the most important priority in Durham.
Good evening. All right, so this is kind of piggybacking on what was mentioned before, but many of the public housing units operating in Durham were constructed in the 1960s and are in dire need of updating and redevelopment. How would you work with the Housing Authority in order to get that accomplished?
Okay.
Thank you so much, Mr. McCoy. Really appreciate you participating.
Thank you for the question. I think there's a lot of things the city could be doing to work with the DHA to make sure that our aging housing stock is up to date. It's already been mentioned. I'm not going to go over it again. Well, I guess I will mention it in passing that it's cheaper to build up the stock that we currently have rather than build from scratch. But I would challenge Mr. Schul on the notion that this is the most important issue. I think the most important issue, as I've been saying all night, I sound like a broken record, is providing living wage jobs with benefits to the people who live in those communities. Karen Lotto, who is a consultant for the city, has said herself, affordable housing is subsidizing low-wage jobs. So you keep your $7.50 that you're making from McDonald's, and we'll cover the rest on your home bill. But what about your quality of life? What about your ability to get out of generational poverty? That comes down to the money in your pocket and the work that you do every day, the security that you have with healthcare, and that's something that the city needs to play a larger role in providing for the people of Durham if we want to eliminate poverty. Otherwise, we're just going to keep, scooping water out of a sinking ship instead of plugging the hole that is causing the ship to flood in the first place. Y'all like my metaphor? That's where the issue is. It's important that we, okay, thank you. It's important that we deal with it, but we gotta deal with poverty too. Thank you.
Shay Ramirez.
So I'm really big on accountability, and I think we need to hold Durham Housing Authority more accountable. Like Pierce said, to me, we put Band-Aids on people, and I think we need to stop Band-Aiding the issues and actually get to the root of them and fix them. And I don't think that the Housing Authority does enough for the citizens that live in public housing. I believe that they need to have more workshops pertaining to financial resources, home ownership. I'm about helping people, giving them a hand up and a hand out. And I think a lot of times we just give them a hand out, and we don't want to really see them succeed to a hand up. And I think that we have to hold certain parties, which is Durham Housing Authority, accountable. And I really don't think that they're doing all they can do to help these citizens that really need the help. So I would encourage, or I would make sure that they're doing more to be accountable in these communities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilman Steve Schul.
So it is true that we're not going to be able to build ourselves out of our affordable housing crisis. Wages is a huge part of the issue for sure, but so is affordable housing. Affordable housing is a huge part of the equation. So how are we going to do it? How are we going to, Mr. McCoy, try to answer your question? First thing we're going to do is we're going to provide city money, as we do now, to help redevelop these communities. We're going to also, which we have just provided $4 million, we provided $1 million to help renovate Damar Court and Maureen Road, which is happening right now. And those are the two of the communities that you referred to. We're also going to do something else important, though. Especially for the larger communities, we need to make them mixed income. People now are living in isolated poverty. And when you live in isolated poverty, you bear a double burden. Not only are you poor, but everyone else around you is poor, and you don't have those resources that you need to lift yourself up. We need to change that. There are 1,000 people living in this isolated poverty, for example, in McDougal Terrace. When we redevelop our larger housing communities, we need to redevelop them as mixed income communities. The people that are there need to be able to stay there, and we need to have other people living there too. We can do that. We just did it over here at the Lofts at Southside. We can do it other places in Durham.
One of the reasons why Federal Street projects along here is because the Durham Housing Authority said they were cash strapped and they didn't have the finances of the fund to keep it going. With the Durham Business Professional Chain as Chair of Economic Development, I was sitting on a session with McDougal Terrace. McDougal Terrace is a part of the master plan, was a part of the master plan for North Carolina Central University, where they're going to build a stadium. I talked then with the head of Durham Housing Authority, asking him why was that, what were they going to do with McDougal Terrace. He said, well, we're not going to do anything right now because we don't have a place to put them. But as soon as we have a place to put them, McDougal Terrace is gone. Is anyone listening to me, or are we falling for these nice sounding words? These things are happening. Look at Fells Street Project, it's gone. McDougal Terrace is on the blocks to be gone as well. And we're saying, listen to these nice sounding words and thinking these things are going to change the policies in Durham? Are we being realistic? Are we honest with each other? Thank you.
Frottally.
Yeah, the question was about the housing authority. First, I would like to say that I trust that our new CEO of the housing authority, Anthony Scott, is the right man for the job. He came in with a vision around how do we take our properties that we have and created a plan for making sure that we would move forward. Before he came on, though, the Durham Housing Authority had already put forth an application into the federal government to redo its housing, so he's been working on that. But I think one of the other things it's important to know is that there's a housing ecosystem that we just have to understand. That you can go from homelessness to transitional housing to workforce housing to affordable housing to home ownership to having a house. That's important to know. How do we feed that system? If you get caught in the middle of that system at the housing authority, then you flood the system for people to get housing. What I appreciate about Anthony Scott's model is like he doesn't want to flood, he doesn't want to keep this place stagnant. He wants to have mixed housing, like Steve said, but also be able to educate the people who are residents of his housing so they can get better jobs and education so they can move out of the housing. So we have to understand affordable housing is just not an asset issue, it's a people issue. And if you've never been in an affordable housing, this is academic for you. But if you have been a part about it, you know it changes your lifestyle and your family. So we need to understand that we need to help the affordable housing place, working with Anthony Scott in this process.
Thank you very much. The next question was submitted by someone who is here in person, Paul Jaffrion. Thank you so much. We appreciate your participation.
Hi, good evening. My question has evolved a great deal since I wrote it. So I think in understanding affordable housing, it can be helpful to have a common language, a common definition, and a common understanding. So I ask each of you, in real numbers, what is your definition of affordable housing for rental, for home ownership? What are the numbers, roughly, approximately actual, of Durham residents who cannot currently afford affordable housing as you have defined it? And at the end of 4 years, what will you reasonably, practically have accomplished in mitigating and bringing those individuals to affordable housing? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Just to give all the candidates a second to think about that, a reminder to all of you, please take care of the bartenders and servers who are part of the people who need affordable housing here in Durham. Don't forget the bulgogi taco guys who are out there working hard in a hot truck as well. I have friends here themselves who work in hot food trucks, and let me tell you, it's no easy job, and it's not easy to find affordable housing, even on middle income in Durham. So, Pierce, are you ready?
I went first last.
Oh, you went first last time. I'm sorry. Shay, are you ready? Thank you so much for the question as well, Paul Jaffrion.
That was a long question. Okay.
That's why I stalled for you.
Okay. So for me, affordable housing is someone that has an affordable living wage and they're able to sustain their home in a safe and environmental area. That's what affordable housing is to me. And again, I believe that is not taking place in all areas of Durham. Within the 4 years, if I become mayor, my main focus is to help each individual, whether they be disabled, mentally ill, whatever the case may be, homeless, help them find affordable housing, but not just help them, educate them, provide them with resources to be able to sustain their home, and also a job, education, keep their home up. I think that's really important. I have a couple of homes in my neighborhood which are Section 8, which are not supposed to be Section 8 homes. And it drives me crazy to drive by this street in my neighborhood, and they don't take care of the property. So I really think that's really important. We gotta teach people to take care of people's properties, so that way they can learn how to take care of their own property.
That's our time. Don't make Meredith say it a third time. She's trying real hard to be nice. City Councilman Steve Schul.
So 50% of people who rent in Durham are housing burdened, defined like this. They're spending at least 30% of their income on housing. 25% of our renters are spending 50% or more of their income on housing. So think about that. That's a lot of people. And here's what I can promise if I get elected. It's only a 2-year term, Paul. I wish it was a 4-year term. And by the way, I like your beard. It looks awesome. I can't promise anything other than I'm going to work like hell on it. That's what I can promise. And I promise that I know a lot. I know a lot. I know how to get a lot of it done. I can't promise a certain number of units. I can, think about a target, but a target might look something like this. Half the Durham Housing Authority authority units are under redevelopment, including we're working on mixed income developments. We've got 2 projects in 2 years that have 9% tax credits, so that we're building 100 units with each of those. That the Durham Community Land Trustees has not only got that 50 units out there in East Durham that it's redeveloping, but it's got 50 more. That Habitat's not building 25, it's building 50. We can do a lot of those things.
Thank you very much. Reverend Williams.
Thank you. I can speak from that perspective. I'm from a family of 12, my mother and father. There are 14 of us. And one thing that, even with my mother not working half the time because she was having babies, but even with that being said, my father was able always to find a place for us to live and have a roof over our head. One of the things I see affordable housing is access. When you look at what the poverty rate here in Durham is, if you make $20-some thousand and have 4 people in your family, that's considered the poverty rate, right? That's you consider at the poverty level right there. And so what am I saying? That we need to make it accessible to folks making $24,000, $30,000 a year, where they can get a place to live. My father was not a mathematician or a astrophysicist, but he made enough money that he had houses or homes that he could take us to that we could live in. And that's the same thing that I'm looking for now here in Durham, accessibility. No matter what your income level may be, do you have access to those type homes? Thank you.
Thank you, Farad Ali.
Yeah, that was a tough question for candidates to answer because we don't have the chart. I mean, there's a HUD chart that talks about what's affordable housing, what's the median income. If you take it, the MSA of Durham and Chapel Hill, which the federal government has done, it's $72,000. If you do the median income of Durham, it's $49,000. And when you talk about affordable housing, there's 3 sets around there, the median income. It's 80% of the median income, or 50% of the median income, or 30% to help determine what rate is affordable for which part of the community. I've talked about a number of times here about the housing ecosystem. So wherever you're at on the ecosystem for affordability determines how much housing is there for that. But one of the things I would tell you in my 2-year terms that I would do is focus on job training, because affordable housing, it's the XY axis, right? Supply and demand. If you got the supply and demand like this, but your wages are down here, then it's not affordable. But if you move the wages up by creating job training programs for the industries that are prospering inside of our city, like construction, like healthcare, like IT, technical services, then you provide an outlet for the people who are living in affordable housing to move through this ecosystem. It's hard to move through the ecosystem if your rates are still the same. If you're making 50% of $49,000, which is $24,000, then you're stuck inside of a housing community. But if you start working at making sure you can get more wages and a job to move you out of that space, it provides you a chance to move out.
Thank you very much. Pierce Freelon.
Thank you. I think the question that you're raising actually came up about a block away from here at the Durham Committee on the Affairs of Black People meeting we had a couple months ago. And the question that was raised there was about how do we define affordable housing? And there's a federal definition which talks about area median income, basically how much of the money you make every month is going towards rent. And what was discussed in that space was that those metrics are woefully inadequate to identify the need, particularly in Black and Latino communities in Durham, because a lot of those metrics are pulled from census data, which is kind of an amalgam of a lot of different communities working in Durham. But we know that in Durham, poverty is not only is it concentrated, but it's concentrated in Black and brown communities specifically. And those area median income numbers, we need to make sure that the affordable housing investments that we're making are accessible to the most vulnerable folks in our community and are not actually exacerbating gentrification because we don't put enough limits on how long it needs to be affordable. 5 years in some cases, a decade in some others. After that, they can raise the prices up to market value, and now that thing that was supposed to be our champion for affordable housing is actually ushered in the gentrification, which is displacing people of color, especially in Durham.
Thank you very much, Pierce. The next question was submitted via our online form. The city of Durham has invested millions of dollars in the Southside development. Do you feel this was a good investment? Councilman Schul, you're first.
So there are two sides to the Southside development. There's the home ownership side and there's the rental side. And I would distinguish between the two of them in answering this question. The home ownership side of Southside, I think in some ways was a good investment, but it has not accomplished what we wanted because it has truly gentrified a neighborhood without having the people that were living in the subsidized homes that we wanted to live in the subsidized homes. We have an income cap for those homes, but the people that lived in them tended to be graduate students and that kind of thing. That's not really what we were looking for those subsidized homes. On the other side of the street, though, is where by far the most amount of money was spent. That's on the east side of Roxborough Road. That's where we have 132 units, as I've mentioned before, 80 of them affordable, 60% of the area median income, which, by the way, in answer to Paul's question, is $44,000 for a family of 4. That's the HUD definition. I think it's a reasonable one. And now we're building phase 2 of that. That's the second part of Southside. And then there'll be phase 3. So I think that money is extremely well invested. I think the home ownership money certainly hasn't done what we wished that we had done with it. And that happens sometimes. So I think that we all need to learn from that, and I think we have.
Thank you so much, Councilman Schul. Reverend Williams.
No one that I know that lives in Southside is satisfied with what's happening in Southside. What's happening in Southside is that what happened, they used CDBG money. They used a loan for $19 million that was supposed to be going towards housing and counseling. They used that money to go in and raise over 100 properties in Durham, put a blight on those properties so no one could buy from them. How do I know? Because I talked to self-help, and they said they would not sell to anyone that lived in that community. They would not sell homes to anyone in that community, put a blight on it. Then they lifted the blight, and then the developers came in with $300,000 and $400,000 homes that the people in the community could not even afford to pay taxes on their home now, much less buy a home in that community. Is anyone satisfied with that? Well, you could have taken that same money, that CDBG money, which was supposed to help the community, you could have taken that same money, those code enforcements, what they're using now on elderly people in the Southside community, you could have taken that same money and had those houses repaired and fixed. But they're not willing to do that because there's an agenda. And you have to be blind not to see the agenda that's out there. Thank you.
Farad Ali.
Yeah, we talked about my opinion on how the city should be tentative in doing housing. I don't believe that's the city's biggest strength. Southside does have 2 or 3 stories to it. I think the one story that I could talk about the industry of the marketplace was that when in 2008, when the market crashed and the housing counselors went away, we did not train the people who once lived in that community so they can come back in and buy these homes. We didn't give them the homeowner training that they needed to be able to get to these homes. And then when the market came back, it reacted differently. There are some market conditions that made that not work, but I also think it maybe not be the best place for the city to work in. The city should use its dollars more towards investing in property and looking at the leverage through a housing trust fund, much like what we're doing. The projects that we're talking about that we're doing well in, that we're here celebratory issues, is how the city is investing in this project with partners who are experienced developers. So for the next side of Southside, I think we'll have a better outcome. One thing did happen in Southside. We did changed the community. There was a lot of crime in that community. They even made movies about how bad it was in gangs. So that kind of element has changed and is gone, which helped our image. But I think it's important that we make sure we don't displace people and we don't have a place for them to go. Again, affordable housing is a human issue, not just an asset issue.
Thank you very much. Pierce Freeland.
Okay, Farad, I'm going to be honest. I'm really bothered with what you said just then. The image of Durham is not improved by removing people from homes that they've lived in for generations, especially not in the historic Hayti community where we've dealt with displacement. Ooh, just need a minute. Okay, I think, the South Side is gentrified. And for someone who was born and raised here in Durham and who remembers what that community was like and the people that were there, they were not criminals. These were individuals who were plagued by poverty. This is what I've been trying to tell y'all all night. The solution is not to fix up the houses and get the criminals out. The solution is to provide those people with resources so that they can build a future for themselves and their families and not be displaced. Okay. Across the street from Southside, there's a mural that depicts Black Wall Street. You'll see it on the side of Food Mart. It is a peeling mural, crumbling onto the ground. I wrote about this in Clarion Content. It is the ultimate metaphor for what's happening to our historic Black community here in Durham. And what have we learned? That's a good question. Steve Schul asked, what have we learned? I think we've learned that we need a new direction in City Council.
Thank you, Shay Ramirez.
So some people might agree that it was a good investment. I totally disagree. And the reason why I say that, we can just look around and we see the people displaced, right? Right? Okay. So to me, it wasn't a good idea. It wasn't a good idea. People that have been affected have a lack of resources, a lack of funds, a lack of knowledge, and just not being the status quo. And for me, the crime really hasn't gotten better. The Hillside Park is not a great place. You have drug addicts that are in that park right now to this day. It's really bad. You have, last Friday, it was 3 shootings on the south side. One young lady, 30 years old, with 5 kids died. So I think, for me, for local government, we put those houses over there, but it wasn't revitalized because there's still issues over there. People have, which is crazy, spent $400,000 for homes, $300,000 for homes, and then 2 blocks away, they're still shooting and killing. So I think that when it was done, it wasn't truly, really planned out like it should have been, and that's how I feel.
Thank you very much. I know we said we were going to stop at 8:30, but because we started a little late, we're going to go 2 more questions. Reverend Williams will be first for this one, and for the final question, we'll give the candidates 2 minutes so they have some attempt to sort of wrap things up and summarize the night. Again, we really appreciate you coming out here. The next question is, how does your personal socioeconomic background inform your approach to housing?
Thank you for that question. As I said, I'm from a family of 12 children. I was born in East Durham. I've lived in East Durham. But also, I'm a retired financial analyst. And being a financial analyst, I get to see both sides of the world, where we manage money for millionaires, foundations worth billions of dollars. We manage money for them. And I got to see that, there is another side to the equation, that everyone does not live in poverty, that there are some people that live on the other side. And so what that allowed me to see is that why can't everyone live like that? Why can't everyone have a better lifestyle? And that's what formed my opinion because of where I've been. I've been on both sides of the equation. I've seen it. And the sad part I think about is that there are a lot of people that speak to you that only have a position of being only on one side. They don't know the other side. I know both sides. That helps form my opinion about what can happen in Durham and what will happen in Durham with me as your mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Farad Ali is next.
Great. So this is not an academic exercise for me, meaning that I'm not going to talk about poverty and as a way of what's the solution for the people that have been a part of it. So I've participated in poverty as a young man. I grew out of poverty with my parents having jobs. Neither one of my parents went to college. They taught my brother and I how to grow up and to be the best that we could be. My brother's online to be a lieutenant colonel in the Army, and I've been able to be blessed and be able to go to schools and develop. And I would tell you that I understand the importance of having good policy and people who understand those people, not from a sympathetic and empathetic point of view, but understanding why it's important to have a good job. When my dad got a good job, it changed the whole trajectory of my family. We were able to move to North Carolina, and we moved to a place called Gray Street, into a small place that was almost 800 square feet. That's where I grew up going to East End School. Then we moved to another community. Here he uses VA loan. So I'm connected to this issue around poverty and jobs. It's not an academic exercise. I don't do this every day, nor can I pontificate on the exercise of it. But I can tell you this, that I would make sure that we would focus on building people, building their jobs, and giving them an opportunity to succeed. Because without that, this is going to continue to be an academic exercise. Our focus need to realize that Durham is cool, and that we're cool because of the people. And when we start understanding that having housing is not just, it's applied by us. I think all of us are telling you how we're different, but we all agree to it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Pierce Freelon.
Thank you. First, I want to start by acknowledging my own privilege. I think this is a very important question. I grew up, the first house that I grew up on was on Trinity Avenue here in Durham. My dad came down here for college and started working for an architecture firm called O'Brien Atkins, and he was able to work and build and had a very nice life for me and my siblings. I went to, from EK Poe, I had some private school at Immaculata, and then DSA after that. What I learned, here's what I learned. I learned that I grew up with a house over my head, food on the table, my parents were employed and following their passions. I learned that those are basic human rights, and everyone in Durham should have access to those basic human rights. And I will work every day to make sure that the privileges that I grew up with are the standard for every child in Durham. That's what I'm gonna grind for every day for y'all. And I appreciate the opportunity to stand up here and to talk and to build, but this is also the work that I've been doing. You can kind of look into my background. I run a community center downtown called Black Space, which is about providing access for kids, our vulnerable kids, teaching them beat making, training, poetry to express themselves because they need the same opportunities that I had in my household growing up. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pierce. Shay Ramirez.
So my grandparents raised me. I've always had a home, car, all that good stuff. But I've always had a need or a passion for helping other people. I have allowed people in my home this year. I've had 2 families in my home. My kids say, Shay or Mom, this is not the community house. Nobody else can come this year. So I'm always offering my doors to people that might be in a situation or might not have a place to go. Sometimes I know them, sometimes I do not. And the reason why I'm saying this is because a lot of times people say, well, I'm too busy, I don't have the time. We're always going to be busy in life, but we all, as citizens of Durham, we have to go that extra step. We all have to help someone else. We have to pay it forward, because a lot of us out here are successful. We have arrived, and we need to make sure that we help someone else get through the same thing that we've been through. I think it's very important. I don't think that local government can do it alone. I think it takes local government, citizens, and law enforcement to work together to fix the issues in Durham. And we have to do that. We have to stop saying what we can't do, and we got to start saying what we can do, and we just got to get her done.
Thank you very much, Shay Ramirez. Councilman Steve Schul.
I grew up in segregation. I grew up in Lynchburg, Virginia, a small southern town. I went to my first civil rights demonstration when I was 13 years old, and I've never looked back from that. Racial and economic justice is the work of my life. That's what I do. It's why I want to be on city council. It's why I want to be mayor. It's what I do. Pierce mentioned the highway and the destruction of Hayti, and that did happen. In 1979, we started a little organization called the People's Alliance. There are about 5 of us. And we fought the next leg of that expressway through the Crest Street community. Along with the members of that community, we stopped that expressway from destroying that community. This is the work that all of us need to be doing. I do believe that as a white person, I need to be looking at every issue through a racial equity lens, and I strive to do that. I strive to do that on every issue, not just affordable housing. I think it's my obligation. So this work is so important, and this question is so important, and I really appreciate getting it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilman Schul. This will be the final question, Meredith. We're going to give everybody 2 minutes on this question. And if you'll forgive us, we're going to kind of combine 2 questions that we got. First, from Wynn Cook, are there any cities that have developed successful strategies for affordable housing? How can Durham be a model for others? And then from someone on the internet, crgnc3@gmail.com, sounds like a robot, says, Durham is a good place for thinking outside the box. How can we do this for affordable housing issues? So how can we think outside the box for affordable housing issues? And are there any other cities that have developed successful strategies for affordable housing that we could model on? Farad Ali, 2 minutes, here first. Thank you so much.
Thanks. There's a couple of answers to the strategy, so I'm going to keep looking over you. Let me know when I got down to a minute. One thing, I think this housing investment fund is very important because it allows us to leverage the dollars of the cities, private investors, corporations, particularly banks that have a lot of money that's on the books for a Community Reinvestment Act. So banks have this commitment to reinvest in communities. I serve on one of the bank's board. We committed $30 billion to communities. We've already spent $12 billion of that. My hope is that we can also come to Durham and spend some of that money, and that's around affordable housing and job placement for people. That is an innovative way that has worked around the country because it's allowed people to leverage the dollars, that when you have your dollar, you mezzanine other dollars on top of it, then you create a bigger fund, and then the return is for what you do for the housing. Some of that money is grant money, some of that's low interest money, some of that is foundations money, so you actually get a chance to increase the commitment to helping to develop property. That's something that we can do here in Durham so they can make a major impact real quick. Second of all is, as I said earlier, to talk about a bond, understand what's the commitment or the need for this, and issue a housing bond, but specifically understanding where that money is going to go for supportive services in addition to housing. Third thing, I think we need to look at our regulations around how we look at our zoning, making sure our zoning is appropriate, and we exercise a faster way to get some of these things zoned, because if it takes you 18 months to go through site control, acquire the property, make sure the police, the fire, all the things that have to go on, it takes you a long time to get that done. It eliminates the cost of doing that work. So how do we make sure that we can help development happen for affordable housing much faster? And the last thing is to really reinvest in the Durham Housing Authority. They have a new model that's coming out to make sure they have mixed housing, but also in that mixed housing to make sure it has investment. So you can get investment from other dollars and leverage those dollars. The way you're going to help to make this thing work or fix this affordable housing or to help cure some of the issue is you're going to have to leverage the dollars. There is no, as I said earlier, there's no one answer. It's how we do it, but understanding how do we leverage the dollars for the people that need it the most.
Thank you very much. Piers Freelon is next.
Thank you. Well, I've spent a lot of time tonight levying the critique on the focus on affordable housing at the expense of focusing on what I think the core issue is poverty. So I want to talk a little bit, very briefly on what I want to do to eliminate poverty, which I think has implications for affordable housing. Then I'll talk about some affordable housing ideas rather. What we're proposing, Freelon for Durham is proposing jobs for all. We call it Jobs for All. It's a jobs guarantee. It's based on some scholarship by some brilliant professors at Duke University who've been looking at a jobs guarantee at the federal level. It starts with a very basic premise that work is a human right and not a privilege, and that everyone in Durham should have the option to, if the free market isn't providing a living wage job, to find a job with the city at a living wage with benefits. Thank you, yeah. So we're thinking about starting with the pilot program, creating 1,000 jobs here in Durham, pulling resources from our discretionary fund and from private and nonprofit sources as well, and exploring all options to find the money to make it happen. Creating 1,000 jobs, and in that way, eliminating affordable housing by reducing the demand for folks who need it. And we're thinking about okay, I'll move on since I only have a few seconds left. On the affordable housing side, I think there's a couple things we could focus on which provide resources for the most vulnerable folks. I talked earlier about 800 evictions a month in Durham. Well, in Philly, they just put $500,000 aside to provide legal support for some of the most vulnerable folks who are at risk of being evicted. And that's what, at the rate at which people are being evicted in Durham, we only have one individual at legal aid who's supporting the tens of thousands of people who are being evicted right here in Durham. I also think the last thing I'll say is just tiny homes. I talked about it a little bit earlier, but there's a great company called Casita, which does green tiny homes, which can be built vertically for high density. That's the type of innovative solution we need here in Durham. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pierce. Shay Ramirez.
So I agree with Pierce for the tiny homes. I actually saw a story about them several months ago. I love them. They're different. They're unique. And they are helping people that are displaced and are vulnerable have housing. And also being able to own the house is very important. Giving everybody opportunity is very important. What I want to do, I have a model and talent agency at Northgate Mall. And coming here to Durham, I had low self-esteem. And what I do now in the city throughout Durham Public Schools, throughout the middle schools, I've been doing it for years. I empower and teach self-esteem and confidence through fashion and talent. I believe that no one can do anything without self-esteem and confidence. You can't accomplish anything. So that's the first thing that I want to work on. But what I want to do is we have a lot of talent here in Durham. People are creative, they're different and unique. That's why I like Durham. I came here from Greensboro, and I was able to be different and unique, so I fit in perfectly. I wasn't able to be that in Greensboro. And what I want to do is I want to have a mayor initiative construction program. I think that's very vital because everybody I meet, they don't want to do acting, they don't want to do modeling, but they can do other things, which I think are important. They can use their hands. I met a young lady several weeks ago with a form, and she said her son has been out of prison for 2 years. And I said, well, what's the problem? She said he can't find a job. So he can't find a job, he can't get a license, he can't get insurance, he can't get a car. You know how that goes, right? Domino effect. So I said, well, what is he good at? And she said, well, he's good with his hands. I said, okay, what about construction? She said, that would be perfect, but he can't find a job. So we have affordable housing issue in Durham, and we have a lot of talent in Durham, and a lot of people that can't find jobs. So why not start a construction initiative program to intern individuals within the city to be able to teach them how to build property, affordable housing that would allow us to fix the issue, also give those individuals jobs. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shay Ramirez. Councilman Steve Schul.
So first I want to thank the Clarion Content and partners and Aaron and Heather and Justin, and I'm not thanking you, Meredith, you were too mean. But it's been great, and I really appreciate everybody and all the questions. So there are innovations that are good. I mean, tiny homes is a really interesting idea. Habitat just built its first one. I think those are good thoughts. But the main thing we need is an innovation. The main thing we need is to do the things we know work, that are working now, and to make them work better and keep them going. We know how to redevelop Durham Housing Authority communities. Let's do it. We know how the Durham Community Land Trustees can keep currently affordable rental permanently affordable. Let's do it. We know how Habitat can build homes for homeowners. Let's do more of that. We know how to do these things. There are some things that we need to push the envelope on, and I tried to describe, and I hope I described well, what my thoughts are for how we get developers involved in this. I think it is innovative, but it's not something that's never been done anywhere else. To try to downzone, offer the density bonus, and then offer the tax increment financing to get developers to create affordable homes. But we know so much of how to do it, and what we need to do is get the job done together. And that's the last thing I want to say. Here's the thing I'm absolutely sure of. The job of the mayor is not to do this. The job of the mayor is to help bring everybody else together to do this. You're going to do this. I'm not going to do this. I can help. I can play a role. I know a lot. I know a lot about this, and I know all these affordable housing groups that we've talked about. I know them. I work with them all the time. I love them. I care for them, and I try to nourish their work. But what I know is you're going to make this happen. You're going to join those groups. You're going to keep pushing this issue. You are the people that's going to make this happen. And if I'm lucky enough to get elected mayor, I know that what my job is to try to bring you together to help us all face this challenge and beat it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilman Schul. Reverend Williams.
Thank you. The question that I ask you is, do you have the will to do what's right? The question was asked, is there any cities across this country that have succeeded in affordable housing? If you look at Indy Week, if you look at the Herald Sun, if you look at the Federal Reserve out of St. Louis, if you look at any of these places, what you will see that there is one group that since 1999 has continued to fall behind. Asians have improved, Hispanics have improved, whites have improved. But when you go to the black community, they are the one group that has not improved. You can look at any statistic you want to. So then when you're talking about affordable housing, when you're talking about poverty, for the most part, you're talking about the black community. And if you're not willing to address the shortcomings in the black community, you're not talking about addressing poverty. You're not talking about addressing affordable housing. Those are not issues on the top of your agenda. And we have to be honest with ourselves. We have to be willing to admit, am I willing to address that? I know that I have the will because I come from that area. I come from it. But if you don't have the will to ask yourself, why is it that I don't have the will to do what I know is right? These are not my statistics. You can go and find them anywhere. This is what they're saying about Durham. And we have to ask ourselves, are we satisfied? Are we content? Are we satisfied with what's happening to the black community in Durham? Are we satisfied with what's happening to African Americans in Durham? Or can we do better? And I believe that by the responses I've gotten at forums, black, white, Hispanic, that we can do better. But what it takes is the will to say that I will do better. And that's all up to you. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. I'd like to thank all of the candidates. I'd like to thank Sonic Pie for the sound, Joyce from Shadowbox for the video, my partner Heather Cook for putting this together, Justin Laidlaw running the hashtag MayorUp, Meredith Martindale of Picture During doing the timekeeping. Thank you all for coming. A round of applause, please, for the candidates, Ponysaurus, all of our volunteers, all of the sponsors. Second, I want you to take a deep breath and relax. It's been a lot of heavy information, a lot of things to think about, kind of weighty. You're probably fairly tired of all of this. But third, I want you to do one other thing, because part of what sets Durham apart as a community is that we do not have the same 6 degrees of separation that are so popularly talked about in big places like New York and Chicago and LA, but that we only have 2.5 degrees of separation. And that we're in this together. That's what you heard from the candidates, that you're going to make the change. So take that deep breath, let some of all this heaviness sink into you, resolve that you're going to do something about it, and then start tonight by finding someone that you don't know here, that you have never met before, and introducing yourself to that person, and pledging that you and they will both work for the civic improvement of Durham. We're in it together. We can do it together. It's scary. It's a little nervous to introduce yourself to somebody new, but you've all done it before. Do it again tonight. It's our civic unity that makes us different. It's our willingness to cross those boundaries. We want to be an example to the state. We want to be an example to the rest of the country that this can be done, that we are a city that is black and white and brown and Asian and Hispanic and queer and transgendered and white and Jewish and Christian and Muslim and Hindu, and it does not matter. We are in it together civically. Thank you so much to the candidates. Thank you very much, Ponysaurus, all of our volunteers. Take a deep breath and introduce yourself to somebody new. We'll be back 1 week from today at the Rick House talking about equality of opportunity.